for liftoff in T-minus 30.
Stand by for further instructions, Minnesota Black Robe Regiment.
Secondary guidance systems engaged.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, it will be on my mark.
All systems are a go. All systems are a go.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, you are over the target. You are authorized to fire at will.
Hey, thanks for topping. I swear it's 1:17 now by the time the intro played. I have not been drinking that, water and whatnot, but I'll chalk it up to workout this morning and a bunch of other chores out of the way. But yeah, you guys are in for a treat today. I got Brian Paulson back. If you remember, he was the Libertarian activist that I brought on to talk about how he helped them. Well, honestly, single-handedly defeated millions and multi-million dollar wasteful spending package as it regards law enforcement headquarters in his hometown. And he's our mutual friend Chip has described him as the single greatest signature collector when it comes to petitions in at least in the state of Minnesota, if maybe not in the history of signature collecting. And I might be playing that up a little bit, but yeah, we're going to be talking about flock cams today. But before we get to that, the funny thing, the other half asked me, she said, "What are you talking about on your show today?" And I said, "Flock cams." And she said, "You're going to talk about cameras for your chickens?" I said, No. She goes, I don't even know what you do anymore. But yeah, so we're going to be talking about flock cams. But before we get to that, I want to give a big shout out to all of the channel members. You guys especially help keep things going. You help keep me on the air. There might be people out there that aren't happy with you for that, but I am. I'm happy with you guys for doing that. But show producer level credits out to the Angry Vet, IMAV from Subscribestar, and my good anonymous show producer, who has continued to be just super helpful in funding the program by way of donations. So thanks to you guys. Thanks to all the channel subscribers. You guys are great. Looky loose. My hate watchers, and yes, I do have hate watchers. I also have, I think I have like permanently assigned now Minnesota BCA, FBI, and NSA agents who have been tasked with enduring my content for the betterment of society. But yeah, we're going to bring Brian in. We're going to talk about flock cams, but I want to make you guys aware of why this is such an important topic. So for years, there was a system running around the U.S. used by local law enforcement. It was referred to as Stingray. And I talk just briefly about it in the description of the video here. So Stingray was a system where they could just drive through your neighborhood with an unmarked vehicle, like a cable company or tech company van, just unmarked. And Stingray would pull in all of the cell communications that are happening. And that would be your text messages, your phone calls, even internet usage through your cell company. They'd suck that all in, funnel it through their system, and then put it back out to the cell systems. Now, people say, well, Stingray's not out there anymore. Well, Stingray by name may not be out there anymore, but it is still out there. And it's warrantless searching, literally warrantless searching. And there's now, we've seen a lot of debate about things like red light cameras and license plate readers and whatnot. Some states have said we're not going to allow red light cameras because they lack due process. They are easy to abuse by law enforcement. The system, it's easy for them to abuse. There's just all sorts of arguments against them. Well, every time somebody says, no, you can't do this anymore, law enforcement gets together with technology and says, hey, can we come up with a system to go around the last time they told us we couldn't do this anymore? And that's where we're at with flock cams. So I hope you guys will share this out, that you will stick around for the entire conversation, because Brian doesn't talk about things without having studied them. So we're going to bring Brian in, and everybody say hi. Brian, thanks for being here. Thanks for doing this today. Oh, I got to unmute you. There you go.
All right. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about these flock cameras, which I've been talking about them for, I don't know, almost a year now. I think over a year now. But it's actually starting to become a little bit more in the mainstream. So, yeah, I guess, just to give a little of my background and how it does kind of apply to this. I've been doing IT stuff for, 2009, I think. So yeah, quite a few years I've done that. And I was in the Navy and I was IT for them. And I am Security Plus certified with CompTIA, so that, the network security and stuff like that. So
give us a little bit of background without going into, like personal detail. I don't want you to dox yourself. It's impossible to really dox yourself these days because people can find us, as we know, way too easily the way it is. But give us a little bit of background, not as an appeal to authority argument, but when it comes to tech, just talk a little bit about what it is that you do and why you can know these things and be so ahead of the curve on this stuff before most people even know what's happening.
Well, I did a lot of stuff with the Navy.
I did some stuff.
So, and I've been in that industry. So yeah, I won't talk much about that, but
he does disavow all of his state of behavior of the past.
So yeah, I have learned, my past experiences have made me who I am today, I guess. So,
which is fair to say about everyone, Brian. So let's don't try to single yourself out like somehow you are the saint of self-learning. But anyway, okay.
So let's these flock cameras, and the one thing I want to let people know is they kind of think about these license plate reader cameras. And they think that they've been around for a while, which they have. But like you said, the new thing that they're doing is that they've privatized it. So, police cars have these license plate reader cameras, and I have a lot of issues with like the existing stuff that the state has currently said is constitutional. The license plate readers that they'll drive through neighborhoods and read them, and they'll pop on their hot list for stolen, or maybe they'll put a all point, bulletin out to be on the lookout, BOLO, for certain vehicles, but those still require warrants for them to investigate that stuff, or the police aren't actually looking at that data when they drive through. That's their argument for those. Now, the flock cameras is completely different, because these cameras will be posted around a city or different roads, in parks even too. They have ones that are not license plate readers, but they're put in parks and they can see hats, or you can say, search for a guy in a park with a Trump hat, or put a bolo out for a Trump hat, right? And then they would get an alert if someone is in a park that's wearing one, right? All that is because it's privately owned. The cameras are not owned by the city. Cities do not own the cameras. They're owned by Flock. They're maintained by Flock, and the city just rents. It's like a subscription to a service. So just like the city has a magazine subscription that get delivered, to the police department or the city, this is just a subscription, and they can access that data in the subscription.
By the way, I want people to understand too. So, and I'm not going to even apologize for cutting you off, because that's how. I mean, you know how I am. Yeah. You've learned about me now. That's how body cams work too, folks. Body cams and even dash cams, but in particular body cams. So, like, if you go to the agency that I worked for almost 13 years, for a very large time of that, the Olmsted County Sheriff's Office was contracted through Axon, which is owned by the Taser company. So, or vice versa, but they were they had Axon body cams. Axon body cams, you pay a subscription to have access to a server that's dedicated to your agency. And because the amount of data that is stored from a shift worth of body cameras is too much for almost any agency to be able to have that kind of storage in place. So you basically are paying, again, a subscription to that service. And so that data is technically owned by a private corporation and stored for public entities. And so that's what Brian's pushing on here is Flock is not the type of cam. It is a camera system. And if I'm correct, it's AI based, correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's all
Okay,
linked
so I
to
interrupted
AI.
your thought. Go ahead.
So yeah, it's a subscription, and they have these in like not Home Depot. The Lowe's has them. I think Home Depot has them, but I know for sure Lowe's does, and they'll have them in their parking lots. And then they allow the police to have access to those too. So it's not just on the public roads; they're also putting them on private properties.
Correct.
I talked with it was a hotel, I think. It was either an apartment complex or a hotel up in like Chaska or Chanhassen, one of those areas. But they had a few issues, and the city was going to revoke their license unless they put a flock camera in. So there, the city is forcing this company to either, well, you're either going to give up your license and your business or put a flock camera in and let us have access to it. And now they have a flock camera there. And those people that work at that place can have access to this data too, because they pay just like the police do.
Yeah, I want that to sink in. So when we hear people talk about fascism today, and people love to throw that term out against whatever political figurehead that they don't like. Oh, they're a fascist. You know, it's very common these days for people to call out Trump as being a fascist because of they just don't like him. There are some things about the Trump administration that certainly have fascistic tendencies. But what Brian just described is very much a fascistic action. You have a business. We're all okay with you having this privately owned, privately operated business, but we're going to control how you operate that business. And to do that, we're going to issue license. And you're going to pay for that license, but now we're going to yank your license if you don't do what we want you to do. We're not telling you you can't have a business. We're just telling you you can't have it unless you do what we want. And so now they're getting this flock cam at this business in Chanhassen or Chaska or whatever. Through the threat of violence, really, it's violence to impact somebody's ability to earn a living if they don't do what you want them to do. And saying, we're going to yank your license unless you put this up. Well, most people don't have enough of a spine to risk that kind of financial penalty in their life. So next thing you know, private property, you've got a flock cam.
Yep. And
that
these things are
the government can act, everywhere. You started to keep a kind of a map on this. How quickly are they creeping up in Minnesota?
Well, and they're not all on this map. So this website called DFlock, get it? You know, like where they're flock, right? So it's dflock.me, deflock.me. That's the website. And they have a map on there, and I actually have it pulled up right now. So right in the Twin Cities right now, and these all have to be added by people. There's 285 just in the Twin Cities. And I added one this morning. Just this morning. Last night I was out by Mystic Lake by the the reservation, the Indian reservation there. And there was one sitting there. My wife pointed it out. And I just this morning added another one to the map. You know, these things, they got them all over the place. And then they can tell where you're going. Like maybe they put it on all the entrances for this Indian reservation. So now they know who's going there, who's coming. And it's really creepy that these are not all posted. Like I've probably put up 7 or 8 myself into this database. So I bet you they have about half. Yeah, there is it's hard to see on my screen.
Yeah, I'm trying to find a better way to show it if we can. Let's see here. That's not better. That's not better. Let's try this. Nope, that's not better. That one.
What city is that in where you're at?
Yeah, this is where I'm
over
at.
like to the Twin Cities.
Well, let's just try Rochester then. Let's see if Rochester has anything. So,
They don't have anything on the map, but if you go to Faribault, Faribault's got 9.
okay, so let's try.
But it doesn't mean they don't have them. These all have to be added by people, and it just takes one person to start adding them in their area. But this,
How about try St. Paul? There we go.
yep. So you can see those little cameras on there, and I guarantee you there's more than that. That's just what someone has put on, and they really have exploded in the last year. So Department of Homeland Security is now giving grants for cities to install these.
Wow. Did you say grants?
Yeah. So New Prague claims, my city, that we're not actually paying for these cameras. Well, I am, because I fund Homeland Security. But their claim is that it's not costing the city anything. And you ask yourself, like, why is Homeland Security doing this, right? Besides the multiple cases where these are abused by agencies for different reasons. For Homeland Security, you have I'd say one of the 2 examples that have already happened is where they're tracking immigrants or suspected illegal immigrants. And then in Texas, another example, a different reason they're using it, is someone they suspected to get an abortion in a different state. So Texas.
Whoa! Wait a minute. Are you seriously? You've read this account, or
This is very, very true. Like, the Texas law enforcement tracked a woman to a different state, and states can have these put outside abortion clinics, right? And they were trying to prosecute her in Texas. So I'm not quite sure how that would work legally. Like, if you go to a different state and like your window tint on your car is illegal in Texas, but you drive to Alabama and it's legal, right? Your window tint is legal in that state, or Florida. I'm not sure how Texas could like prosecute you anyways, but so that is an actual case in Texas. Someone went to a different state and they were using flock cameras as part of their case. And then you had the ones for illegal immigrants. And then for a lot of people during COVID, I mean, they didn't have these cameras as much. This was just starting out during COVID. And now they're everywhere where they could track people. You're not supposed to leave your house. You're not supposed to go out of the state. Hey, we saw that you went out of the community for Thanksgiving, and they have these cameras in the parks, when they're trying to shutting down the parks. So instead of having a cop that actually have to go there, they just can go on this one system and just look all over the place.
Oh yeah, this is just a real quick search. I don't know anything about
Yeah.
the Electronic Frontier Foundation, but she got an abortion, so a Texas cop used 83,000 cameras to track her down.
Nationwide search.
83,000. 83,000 cameras, and that was
I forgot the link, but that DFlock website had a link to another website that showed every search that someone's done. Oh yeah, so if you go to the DFlock website, then there's this Eyes on Flock, eyesonflock.com, and that shows you the top search reasons. This is another thing. They say, oh, we don't need a warrant, but don't worry, we put a reason in when we search, right? So the number 1 reason, investigation. That was the reason. So they could search, the database, and they don't put like the investigation number or they just put investigation. That's the most common. The second most common, INV. So investigation abbreviated. That's the second most common. Then daytime search was the third. Invest is number. Yeah. So these, like, when they do these searches with no warrant required, and they say they need to put a reason in, they just put, investigation or ENV, or, it's, or INV. It's yeah. So, and I guarantee you, everyone's been on one of these cameras. You can't not be on one. There's so many out there, and that map doesn't even probably cover half of them.
It reeks a little bit of Future Crimes from Minority Report.
Yep. Because, that was one sale point or selling point that they gave, I believe, to like Home Depot or that places, right, was well, ICE wanted them in there because they thought illegal immigrants were, going to the Home Depots, right, and doing labor work, right? So they could use that. So how did they get Home Depot to get them installed? Well, we can find people who have license plates that are tied to shoplifting. So when one pulls in the parking lot, they'll get notified. I believe that's why the big box stores are putting them in, is that. But then this is all big data because it's a private company. Now they can sell this data and use it with like, oh, different types of people are coming to your stores. Like Walmart wants to know like what kind of people, where they're coming from,
Walmart already knows
their income, like all that kind of stuff. They want to know, and this is just more of that stuff, especially with the non-licensed plate reader type, where it can actually do, they claim it doesn't do facial recognition, but I think the technology is there, but they're doing all the other recognition, just like the cars. They claim that they're not doing driver profiles, but they're doing one on the license plate. So they make a profile of the car and they claim it's, it's not the person. We're not doing profiles on the people. We're just doing it of the car, which is linked to a person.
Right. Well, they're going to say, oh, well, Hellcat, we know who drives Hellcats.
Yeah.
And whatever that means. But I don't see how this isn't going to lead. If this is an AI-based data gathering, data collection system, how on earth is it not able to do facial recognition?
Oh, it's able to. They just claim that they're not using it. So,
so we're supposed to just believe that Flock's not using it, or that law enforcement's not using it
until they turn on that feature. But some points that I went, the ACLU's got some stuff they're working on this, and the Institute of Justice, and some things that you can do in your community is like, one, try to stop the cameras and talk about how they're very invasive, right? But if you can't do that, like some of the next best things, right? Like maybe they're going to put cameras in, period. Okay. It would be better if they're not Flock, and they can still do all the same stuff that the city always is trying to say, like, oh, we want to do the hot list, stolen vehicles,
right?
Amber alerts, right? All of those things can still be done without Flock cameras. You don't need the Flock cameras to do all that stuff. And they can still have it like a city system that's stored locally, that's not accessed nationwide and not searchable nationwide. Or even if you can get them to, because right now Flock claims they store the data for 30 days and they delete it. Well, what if they keep it for longer? I don't quite know. But why do you need it for 30 days? If a car accident happens or something happens, do you really need 30? How about 1 day? Like most crimes get reported within a day. If there's vandalism at a park, it'll get reported within a day or two. Maximum, right? Can we get it brought down from 30 days? Because right now, a cop pulls you over and they can see where you went for 30 days, what time you left town, if you went to the hospital, you went to certain appointments. Oh, we saw that you take your kid every Thursday to this clinic over here. After you went to the clinic, you went to the school. Oh, so we know, so they can derive all sorts of information from this kind of stuff.
Well, it has a predictive, deductive outcome is what it does. It's like, we're going to watch your driving patterns, watch your driving habits without being able to tell whether you were speeding or not. But we're going to link you to a crime-laden neighborhood.
Yep.
Because of where you drive and how often you're there. And therefore, because you're in that crime-laden neighborhood all the time or on a regular basis, you must be part of that. So therefore, now we're going to go out and pursue warrants for surveillance, wiretaps, and things like that, all based on nothing more than your location.
Yeah.
And there's even something else about it that is disturbing to me, is that this isn't going to just pick up people in cars. This is going to be picking up people walking, people, exercising, families. And if private businesses have access to it at the same time that law enforcement does, what prevents somebody at a private business it's bad enough that somebody in government, somebody in law enforcement could misuse the data. But what would prevent somebody with nefarious intent that's working for a private business to not start tracking someone's movements and target them for a heinous personal crime, a bodily crime? I see the same girl that I think is really hot walking down the sidewalk along this apartment complex or along this business. And I happen to know that with pretty much clockwork regularity, she walks around the back of this building where there is no, surveillance. And that gives me 5 minutes to go out and do what I want without any. And it sounds like a stretch, but there is just so much about this that is very dangerous on just a surface level. What do you think people are just so conditioned to see cameras and whatnot in public now that they just don't even care? And do you see deeper ramifications for this for liberty and privacy in the United States?
I think because I just talked to some people the other day in my neighborhood, and I asked them if they saw those cameras, in the park they just put up, and they thought they were just normal recording, like CCTV cameras that you see in stores. No one actually reviews them.
Like they went to the police department or something.
Yeah. They think like, oh, well, that's like CCTV, where you have a camera and it's recording the park and it goes to a server. No one's actually monitoring them. They're not sitting there watching them, and they don't review them unless there's a need, like someone gets attacked at the park or something, and then they need to review the footage. But instead, it's the searchable database that's nationwide that is case after case after case of police officers looking up ex-girlfriends in different cities or in their own city, or they're falsely reporting a vehicle as stolen, and they've taken a family out on the hot pavement, making them lay down with little girls sitting there on the hot pavement with the police guns pulled out.
Yeah, that was recent, wasn't it? I know which one you're talking about.
No, it's happened a lot. That one, the government.
He received like really bad burns from the pavement, if I remember that story correctly.
Yeah. And I think it was Colorado, but it's funny, or not funny, but like the government pays for these cameras and Flock gets paid. And then that happens. And then the family gets a $1.9 million payout. That guess who pays? We do. Right. And it's like, right, because they violated these people's rights and they have to get compensated. But like the company doesn't care. Flock doesn't care. They get paid.
Flock's argument in that situation is going to be, hey, we're just providing a service as requested. What law enforcement does with that is not up to us.
Yep. Oh, we say that you're supposed to verify the license plate. They just happen to not do that time and time and time again. But I do want to
just like no knock warrants. Oh no, we have the right address, a completely wrong address. Like 2 blocks over.
Yeah. Oops. 4th Street. Oh, I thought it was 4th Avenue.
4th Avenue. Yeah.
But one good thing is I do want to talk about the court case we got coming up. So Norfolk is getting sued. Institute of Justice is taking them to court. And
is that the Minnesota branch of Institute for Justice?
It's a nationwide Institute of Justice.
But they have an office in Minneapolis, don't they?
I did not know that. But yeah, they seem to do a lot of really good stuff, and they have this 4th Amendment kind of thing that they're trying to do. So they took up 2 people in Norfolk, Virginia, and the case starts October 6th is when it starts. But before that, they did a motion to dismiss. Flock did not join the lawsuit. They thought it wasn't even going to go to court. So I think. So they decided
Flock did not send their legal representation to you.
It's the city. It's the city of Norfolk, no Flock. Right.
Wow.
So in Flock, what's interesting, I read recently, they've lobbied, not to get off on a tangent, they've spent almost $100 million in lobbying. That's how much money is in this stuff. But so it's great. They missed it. The judge said, no, you or the case will continue. And then Flock tried to join. They said, whoa, we want to join. And it was kind of funny. The judge ruled they cannot join the case. And in his opinion, he wrote that the train has left the station and you did not get on.
So they're not going to be able to kick in their, shall we say, their very large purse to help defend the city.
No, so it's really good news. And then I
That
believe
is
the judge,
amazing.
he had referenced a couple of cases in his opinion why not to dismiss. And I don't know if you'd ever heard of this Baltimore case. I forget the name of it, but the city of Baltimore had a Cessna or something like that flying over the city, taking photographs for like, it was like almost 50 hours per week, taking photographs. Every 30 seconds, it'd snap a photo. And it was just, and I forget, it encompassed like 80 or maybe more percent of the city. So the courts have ruled that as unconstitutional. So that,
Wait a
that's
minute.
like
So the courts, what city was this? Baltimore?
Baltimore.
So what district is that?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Filed in. Yeah, it was the leaders of a beautiful struggle versus Baltimore Police Department, 2020 landmark case. So
That's massive because that could affect even drones.
yes, yeah, it doesn't really matter what it is, but they said that you can't, at least at that point, and they were taking high definition photos of the city. So that's really good that the judge referenced that case in his findings to continue proceedings. And October 6th is the date. I think it starts. So I'm hopeful that it'll get ruled unconstitutional, but there's a lot of money, a lot tied up in this company.
Well, if they spent $100 million in lobbying, that definitely pushes their worth well up into the billions. Well into the billions.
Well, they just got valued. I think they're either going to go public, or I just saw that the company was valued at $8 billion.
Yeah, the
They
last
surpassed
report that
BT.
the last report I saw said like 4 billion. So if they're going to an IPO, and they're lobbying at the rate of 100 million, it's got to be at least 8 billion.
And
Yeah.
now they're like, they just did a Forbes article where they're going to be having drones, and they're
So
going
Flock
to.
is developing drones as well.
They are, yeah. They have drones that they're working on, and like, yeah. This is like, it's.
So what do you think the implications are? All of the I don't want to say cursory, but it was almost cursory. I just wanted to get a feel for how people across the country were talking. So I just, I'm watching through YouTube and looking at flock cams, and of course, got all these puff pieces from local news agencies. And like, folks, when you hear that the mainstream media are anti-law enforcement, you aren't paying attention, because there's not a story out there that, outside of like something that's so egregious that it cannot be ignored, Breonna Taylor, Duncan Lemp, things like that. Local media especially is in the pocket of law enforcement. And anytime law enforcement says they're going to do something that is going to cut down on crime and offer you safety and security, local media falls for it and they report it. And that's how they ask the questions. And one of the things that I saw was someone, you kind of, when I saw him, I hate to profile, if you will, but kind of what you would consider more of an older, maybe a little bit more rednecky kind of guy who might have a little bit of a attitude about being told what to do. If you catch my drift, he's like, as long as it keeps us safe and it cuts down on crime, I'm for it. And I'm like, and I think this is how we get here. Not only are we conditioned to be on camera. I mean, how many times have you ever, any of you ever watched somebody who does First Amendment type auditing or public recording just to see how people react? People freak out when they see a cell phone camera, but they look at cameras all day long, and they're conditioned to see cameras when they walk into Walmart, when they walk into, a government building, when they're driving down the street. They see the cameras, and so they're just very conditioned to it. And then when you add in the reality that it's being sold to them that this is for your good. This is for your safety. This is for your well-being. This is to protect you from all the dangers in the world. They don't see that there's anything that could possibly go wrong with that. Has that been some of the, well, obviously, if you just talk to people in your own community about these cameras in their own park, that's kind of,
Yeah,
that was their response.
she had no idea, and I started telling her about the flock systems and what they can do, and she did not. Most people think that they're just traffic cameras that no one's looking at, and that just gets kind of stored away, and that there's not like the hardest thing for people to get is that it's not just like reviewing footage, right? They can just type in there, you know, my shirt color or print or the hat I was wearing in the park. And it makes connections with other people. Like you were talking about the cars and going through neighborhoods. If Flock sees you and it sees another car next to you or by you or drives 5 minutes after you, they'll tag. So when they search your car, it'll say has been seen multiple times with this other car. And it'll start associating you with other vehicles, which we can tie to people, right? But they claim, you know, it's like, oh,
Right.
no, we're just tracking. It's kind of like the IRS doesn't track or doesn't tax you. They tax your money, right?
Sarcasm duly noted, sir. I'm trying to get a good picture of what a flock camera looks like, because I don't think
I think on that deflock.me website, you just go to that one. Where was it? And then go to learn. So go to deflock.me, and then on the top left, there's a little hamburger thing you can click on, and then go to learn. And it has like different brands.
I love your very technical definition of the little hamburger thing.
That's what IT people refer to it as. So yeah, then it shows like Flock and the Motorola ones. The Motorola just was in the news because they were they had a back door. It was streaming all the video footage. Some guy bought one on eBay, disassembled it, and found out that there was a back way to get in all the cameras from Motorola. And that happened to be the same day I spoke at the city council for New Prague. It was like, hey, it was I think Wired magazine had an article on it. And yeah, so Motorola, it's like there's all these data breaches, and then when it's in the cloud, you know, nothing's ever safe. But yeah, Flock's just the biggest.
And I also want to point out too, folks, that by the way, Motorola is the leading manufacturer, leading company for law enforcement communications, law enforcement
Radios,
law enforcement cameras, law enforcement squad car cams, what we call, you know, dash cams. They are all over everything for law enforcement. Everything.
They're extremely expensive. Those Motorola like radios are.
We're not talking about that cheap Motorola crap that you used to buy at Radio Shack. Yeah, okay. If you're younger than 45, Radio Shack was this place where you could go to buy tech stuff before Amazon and everything.
Hey, New Prague still has one. We have a Radio Shack.
You guys are going to end up with a documentary, The Last Radio Shack in America, kind of like the last Blockbuster. But yeah, Motorola is, people look at Motorola and they, you know, if you're over the age of 40, everybody kind of thinks of Motorola as being that cheap stuff, but they're, you know, that's on the DL. That the expensive stuff is way down on the DL, and that's their tech stuff that goes out to law enforcement agencies all over the United States. And it's incredibly, incredibly powerful and very, very, very expensive. That's your taxpayer dollars going to keep you safe.
Can you show one of those pictures so people know?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out the best way to do it where people can actually.
But they usually hide them behind a sign. So as you're driving down the road, they'll be like, as you enter a town, they'll be like the population, right? And then right behind it, they'll put, and it's not like you can't see it, but they attempt to put it behind a sign so you're less likely to notice it. But yeah, you can see right there is the camera, and then right above it, they don't have it cut off, but they'll have a solar panel.
Yeah.
They're on these black poles, and they exactly like that, with a solar panel up top. Now my wife, I usually drive, so she's always just kind of looking around, and so she knows to always point those out to me. And it seems about now it's like once a month. About once a month we'll spot one. And then I'll hear it about in different cities. I think Shakopee just did a whole bunch, so I got to get.
Well, I had sent you an article that Winona County, the city of Winona,
Oh, that's right.
Which then opened up a whole side conversation of, I thought you lived in Minnesota. Like, yeah, there you go. See, we got Lady Jen going, I see these everywhere. And that's the thing, is that when you see them, most of the time, because of the way they look, you're assuming it's probably somebody's private property security cam.
Yeah.
And which, I'm all for. If you want to have security cams on your private property, good on you. Just, and we've got Mercedes Benz watching from British Columbia. She's one of my out of country fans, but we won't tell anybody because we don't want to see you go to jail, Mercedes. Canada's worse than the U.S. But the reality is that you don't notice these, one, because you're conditioned to not notice them, two, because they're designed to not look like anything you've ever seen in relation to government cameras.
Yeah.
At all, because they are operating as a private company, providing a service to both private businesses and government. And as we just heard now with the city that you referenced here in Minnesota, whichever one it was, oh, we're going to pull your license if you don't put one of these up.
Yeah.
It's not good.
Hey,
What other?
let me
Go ahead.
talk about because you had brought up the red light cameras and the speeding cameras, and I do want to point out the difference between these and those. And those I despise those just as much. But one distinct factor or difference between these two is that the red light cameras and the speed cameras, they record only when you have broken the law. And as far as the courts have talked about, and there's been a few other court cases, and they've allowed those speed cameras because they say the camera's there. It's not actually like it's on, but it doesn't record unless there's a violation, right? So you do a red light. Oh, you violated. Now we record, and we record you. And then there's a whole discussion on should that happen and stuff. But these don't do that. They're always recording. They were recording even if you follow all the laws. So that's a big difference between the courts have ruled that speed cameras are okay or the red light cameras are okay because they say, well, it's only recording if you broke a law, versus these, it's always recording, always on, always watching, and you're going to get recorded whether you break a law or not.
And the other aspect of that is that when you're caught, so to speak, on these red light cams, speeding cams, there's a procedure to clear your name. With the flock system, there's nothing to clear because you don't know that you're being tracked. Well, you do now if you've watched this, but just the pattern developing in this situation is that we are all being tracked all the time. You see a lot of people freak out. Man, I turn my cell phone off and leave it at home. I'm like, why do you have a cell phone if you leave it at home? But I turn my cell phone off and leave it at home because I'm always, they're tracking me. I'm like, dude, they're tracking you whether you have your cell phone on you or not. And they are developing patterns for your behavior. And the way that, well, I'll bring this into the mix. President Trump just ordered troops into Portland to defend ICE facilities. Now, think about the reality of living in Portland right now. If there's flock cams in Portland, which I'm sure there are, they're everywhere. You just happen to live in a neighborhood around an ICE facility, and all of a sudden you're dealing in a situation where you're out walking around and they see you walking around this ice facility all the time, and they decide that because you're constantly out there, you're surveilling this ice facility, and you could potentially be dangerous. So now they're going to start looking to see if you're wearing, gear, merch that indicates that you are against or an enemy of this action, or they identify you even though there's no facial recognition. They identify you, they follow, they figure out where you live, and then they find you on social media, and you speak out against these things. The next thing you know, like, your liberty is gone. Your liberty is absolutely gone because of this. I don't even want to call it cooperation, but this coercive standard that we're seeing established, where these cameras can be basically ordered onto private property by government through the threat of penalty. Now you have no privacy, no security at all, none. And when you have no privacy and no security from the government, you have no liberty and you have no freedom. Period. There is none. And I think that's why, Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, which is why you're pushing against this. You're not pushing against this because you want criminals just running the street, no accountability. I believe you're pushing against this because of how much of a threat this is to liberty and freedom and the pursuit of happiness in the United States.
Yeah. It's how it can always be used against you. People think right now, like, oh, well, my mayor of my town or my chief of police or a state or like whatever level it is, like, I guarantee you, if they're not right now using it against you, they can in the future. It's like how the Patriot Act was turned inward, right? Like, people never thought that would happen, and it'll be used against you. It will. And
many of us warned a lot of people, no, this is meant to be turned against you, by the way.
Yeah.
So, I don't want to say I don't like speculation. I think part of living in the reality of the world that we live in now, and Brian, correct me if you think I'm wrong, is that we have to speculate on what something like this could result in because of what government has done to us in the past. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. That's for me, I look at COVID, or just because right now they're doing it for illegal immigrants, what happens when they target you, right? When they had moms during COVID that were, terrorists. They're identified as being terrorists because they were going to school board meetings, right? So isn't that a justification? They don't even really need a warrant. They can just, oh, well, that's a part of our investigation, and we're going to look up these people and where they're driving, and oh, it's during COVID. Well, you're not supposed to be leaving your city or your house. It's just, it'll always be, used against you, and you gotta push back. And like, I'm not advocating for cops to not be able to do their job, but they've always done their job without cameras, right? They have to do an investigation as part of their job. Would it be easier? Yes, it would be easier with these cameras. So if they don't need a reason to pull you over, right? If they could just pull anyone over and search them, would their job be easier? Yes, it would. But that's not how we are. We have a constitution. We have rules. So, and they always like to claim like, oh, well, if we had during New Prague City Council meeting, they said there was some vandalism at one of the bathrooms. And they said, well, if we had the flock cameras, then we could have solved it, right? Because
they actually said that.
Yes. Yep. They were in the middle of installing them into the parks, right? But here's the thing: is you don't need the flock camera to solve that crime. Even a normal camera would have done it, like the CCTV ones that I mentioned, right? But they claim, oh, well, the flock ones would have solved it, or you could have even solved it without a camera. Right? You could have done investigations different ways, right? You could talk to people, interviewed people, right? Like, there's other ways to do stuff, but they just they use that as a justification of, well, if we had these flock cameras, we could have solved it. So
you brought up a good point. Cops are solving crimes because of these cameras. And so and that's one of the arguments I heard is everybody says they want more cameras out there. I don't think people you know what? I don't even say that. when law enforcement makes arguments like that, when the government makes arguments like that, that people are demanding more cameras, they're being intentionally obtuse. That's exactly no, we don't want more cameras trained on us. We want more cameras trained on you. Like, could we go ahead?
I asked them in that meeting, I said, we're the 11th safest city in Minnesota for last year, right? Like we're pretty safe, right? So what is it success? What does success look like to you, right? I said, is it a reduction in crime? Is it a higher solve rate? What if you have more calls? Are you going to say, well, we have more calls because of the cameras, or you have less calls? Are you going to say it's because of the camera? Like what does success look like? And of course, the answer, they never did, right? Because after when they next year, they're going to be putting in more. They have it slated to add more cameras already. And they don't even have enough data really to support that, I don't think. And they're just going to twist it and say, oh, we have more calls because of the cameras. Or if there's less calls, they'll say, well, there's less calls because of the cameras, right?
No matter which way they look at it, they're going to be able to justify it because they're going to say more calls means we're fighting more crime. Oh, less calls mean we have defeated crime.
Yeah. So it was just like they wouldn't answer the question because you knew that in a year or two or three, when they want to talk about it, they don't want to, hold themselves accountable to what they said in the past. They want to use the data and just twist it however they want to do more.
What is this costing right now? Because I'd be surprised if you don't know. What is this costing the city of New Prague? Just New Prague alone.
We have 4 license plate reader cameras and then 4 point to zoom PTZ cameras. So the 8 cameras, I think it was a 3-year contract.
These are via Flock, right?
What's that?
These are through Flock.
Yes. All Flock, paid for by the Department of Homeland Security. And I think it was $75,000 either a year or for 3 years. I forget which it was. I think it was for 3 years. And it's a 3-year contract. And then they're already looking at expanding it.
And you already said this, but I really want to beat this point home to people and my audience. The people, my regular watchers, already know where I'm going with this, and I know you know where I'm going with this, but it's incredibly important. Folks, when the Department of Homeland Security calls up New Prague, Minnesota, and geographically, New Prague is about as close to the middle of Minnesota as you can get. I mean, there's probably a more centralized point, but New Prague's kind of like quintessential center of Minnesota. It's got everything. It's got lakes, it's got hills, it's got forests. When the Department of Homeland Security calls up New Prague and says, we want you to have these cameras, so we're gonna grant you this money, that doesn't mean it's free, folks. That means taxpayers all over the United States are kicking in, for New Prague to have these cameras. And that, instead of saying, oh, well, at least the people of New Prague aren't paying for it through their property taxes, the question should be why is the Department of Homeland Security so focused on wanting New Prague, Minnesota to have Flock cameras? Why are they paying for this? Why is DHS paying for cameras did you have a big terror problem? Is there a lot of terror? Are you a hotbed of Sven and Oli terrorism? Yeah. Is there a lot of terror networks there? Is there a lot of Antifa networks there? I mean, do you guys have a lot of clashing ideologies that are doing political violence? Or, I mean, what's going on there? What do you guys got going on, Brian?
I guess we're
just Brian. It's
one more camera. Yeah.
That is
a correlation. That you know what? That is a correlation that I moved here, or I got involved in the politics, and then they got cameras, so that you could say that.
Well, I say that somewhat tongue in cheek, but a little bit seriously, because I shared that one comment from the last time I had you on with the gal who's from your hometown. She's like, I always thought this was just some whacked out guy who, had an axe to grind. And then she watched the episode where we talked about your fight to really, explore, do we really need to spend, what was it, $10 million on, it was 10 million, right?
It's more than that. If you include the land, it's like a $12 million station.
Yeah, it was a $12 million police department upgrade to a new headquarters for a town of what are you, 20,000
8,000.
or 8,000? 8,000, yeah, 8,000. At some point, people like you and I are going to get people to pay attention and listen. And just because we're supposed to, I guess, I don't know now, and maybe you've caught on this. Now, all of a sudden, because certain persons in office, we're supposed to trust everything the federal government does. We're supposed to trust them. And when you've got a city like New Prague of 8,000 getting grants from DHS to put up cameras to watch and track, and this is not an over-exaggeration, every single movement that you make when you're in public, even if those cameras are on private property, that should really make everybody say, why are we headed this direction? What's the possible it is not crime prevention. There's no way that they can call this all crime prevention. Do you think so? Is there
not the 11th? Like I said, we're the 11th last year, 11th safest city. We don't have big crime here. Like as far, and especially the I forget what they call it, but like the top tier stuff. Like murders and rapes and armed robberies and like. The biggest news that we had is there was a massage parlor that was doing a little bit of extra stuff. So,
you want happy ending? You want happy ending?
Yeah, the greatest ending. So that was the big news, for New Prague, and one could argue that
flock cameras wouldn't have stopped that.
Well, right, and as far as me, like. I'm not scared of my kids going out because of that. Like that didn't go like, oh, well, because of that. Now I'm not going to let even though it happened before and now it's closed down, but like they're not the people going to that business and the people running the business were not going to harm me or my kids.
Well, let's look at it this way though, too. If DHS, it provided the grant, in other words, tax, wage slave tax cattle dollars to pay for this from the tax base all over the United States. There's no way in the world that DHS and other federal level law enforcement agencies don't have access to this camera.
Oh no, they do. Yeah. And Flock claims, because of this whole lawsuit and some other stuff, they claim that they stopped sharing data.
Oh, bull.
Some federal agencies.
Oh, bull.
It was kind of like a weird how they kind of said it. So we'll see. But I do have to wrap here.
Let me finish this thought real quick. I know you got to go. You got actual fan. I just have to slice potatoes. But with these federal level law enforcement agencies having access to things like this, and you're in a state like Minnesota where marijuana, THC, has been legalized, not decriminalized, has been legalized. It's still illegal at the federal level. Yeah. Now, could you imagine an agency like the FBI or the DEA going, we just saw them exchange. We're going to send agents in to break up this guy who's got marijuana plants. Oh, and how do you know he's got marijuana plants in his backyard? Oh, flock cameras from this park have caught it. And now we're going to go shut him down.
The only place right now, I think, because they haven't figured out the licensing, I think, isn't Red Lake Indian Tribe the only place right now that you can buy it? From my understanding, that's the only spot in the state that you can actually buy it from a dispensary is at an Indian reservation in Red Lake, which is up north. Mm-hmm. And in Shakopee, outside the Twin Cities, I just saw a flock camera. If you want to go to the Indian reservation, you have to go through. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they got them around other Indian reservations, right?
Well,
and just seeing who's going there.
There are more and more counties and cities now that are issuing the license for sales in dispensary levels. So,
okay,
yeah, they're trying to keep some people out, but it's always about who has the most money to bid them. Get on. Well,
I know the state had some issue with who was running it, like the department that was running it, and they fired her.
You mean they wrote a new law and now there are all sorts of questions about how that's supposed to play out? I can't believe that. But Hey, I know you got to get running, and I appreciate your time and info on this. Keep me abreast of anything else that you find out about this, and tell everybody, one more time what to look for and where they can go to report these things, and then get out of here.
Yeah, for sure. So deflock.me, sorry about that. Deflock.me is the website, and you can report them there.
Well, I appreciate all your data on this. I'll do a closing after you go. So go
All right.
get to your prior commitments. Thank you, sir.
I have 2 birthday parties to go to today.
At least it's, make sure you go a flock camera free route.
Yeah. All right. Well, you guys have a good day. Thanks.
Thanks, man. It's not paranoid, folks, to talk about the fact that we are literally living in the inception of realizing 1984. And if you have not read the book 1984, I don't care if you're not a reader. Don't watch the movies that have been made based on 1984. If you do better listening to audiobooks, I consider audiobooks reading. You're taking in the information exactly the way the author wanted it communicated. If you do better that way, because you don't, sitting down and reading is hard for you, there are 2 books. The first being 1984. I urge you to read 1984. The second would be a Brave New World. Brave New World attacks the totalitarian mentality of living in an ultra-controlled society from a different way than Orwell tackled it in 1984. But in 1984, there are scenes that play out with the protagonist where he has a spot in his home that Big Brother, and that's where that phrase comes from, folks. When you hear people talk about Big Brother, that is from George Orwell's 1984, where Big Brother cannot see him because Big Brother has the ability to view you in your private homes in 1984. So those 2 books, find them, through Audible or something like that. But go and read them, or read them through audio booking, and understand that these people were predicting these things were coming our way for a very long time. Folks, there's the old statement that those who would give up both safety and security, or give up liberty and freedom to have safety and security, deserve neither safety, security, or liberty and freedom. And it should blow you away. It should absolutely, without being afraid of over exaggerating, it should absolutely terrify you to think that not only are you being watched everywhere you go, but that while you're being watched, they're building up patterns of behavior about how you move to use against you later on, whether you have committed a crime or not. That's the truth. And so here we sit. And I hate to draw this. I don't even want to bring it up because I know that people are still raw. There are cameras watching us everywhere we go, literally tracking every movement that we make. But we still don't have the full story on Charlie Kirk. Folks, if a Texas law enforcement officer can track a woman using over 35,000 cameras to see her charged for having an abortion in another state. And folks, I am opposed to abortion. I am personally opposed to abortion. I believe it is a states' rights issue. I believe there are answers to abortion other than criminalizing it. But if a Texas law enforcement officer can spend hours going through 35,000 plus cameras across the country to track a woman down and find out whether or not she went and had an abortion in an abortion clinic outside of her home state, and then have her charged for that crime, I'm supposed to believe that we don't have more camera footage of who and what and how the Charlie Kirk assassination played out? Folks, this is not about keeping you safe. This is about keeping you under control. This is about destroying your freedom to move. This is about destroying your freedom to assemble. This is about destroying your freedom to protest. It's about destroying your freedom to speak out against government. There's an old saying, that one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. And I do have problems with that because terrorism is a very specific thing. Terrorism is a very particular issue. But oftentimes, people are labeled terrorists for having dissonant opinions. And with a system like Flock, how far away from tracking you down for being a dissonant voice, being a domestic terrorist are we? Learn how to spot these cameras. Make sure that you follow the link. I'll have the link to deflock.me in the description. And I'm also going to put a link to a promo, for Upside. If you buy gas, and this is not a paid promotion, this is just me telling you how much it's benefited me. If you buy gas and you use your debit card to do it, I would strongly encourage you to use Upside, because I use it and I use a very particular debit card for it. And my history of savings with Upside, I have saved $320 in fuel prices since I started using Upside. So I have a link that I'm going to put in the description of this video. If you go and you click on that link, it will give you a discount for using it the first time, and it gives me a discount for using it the first time. And you will begin to save up cashback benefits on Upside for using a debit card to buy fuel. I'm not one of those people that refuses to use debit cards. I'm going to make them take my cash. Folks, you have to understand, we're moving away from a cashless society, and we're getting to a point where you are not going to be able to use cash in a lot of places. So you're going to have to learn how to get around that. So follow that link to Upside with the benefit link that I put in there, and we'll both benefit. And then you can get your own benefit link and share it with your friends, or you can use my benefit link and share it with your friends to help me out. Helps me get a bigger discount on gas and other goods and services, and you can use it at restaurants and grocery stores. So, I don't know what I got going on this week, to be honest with you. I'm sure I'm going to be putting up some shorts. I got a drive time dialectic that I've got in the can that I want to do. I want to figure out how we're going to talk about it. And then this next weekend, a week from today, I'm going to be driving to Princeton, Minnesota to meet Blake Mostad and his family in person. They're doing a benefit for Blake, and I'm going to live stream from there for a little while. I'm going to do a show there from Princeton to talk a little bit about more information that we have about the case developed around the Minnesota State Patrol trooper Ryan Moser, who paralyzed Blake back on April 9th of this year. So Stay tuned for that and some of the other stuff I got coming out this week. And I'm also working a case of a missing person in the state of Minnesota. I have some body cam video from that's helped me develop some very interesting, what I believe are some very interesting and plausible theories about what happened to the young man who is missing. So thanks for being here. Thanks for tuning in on a Saturday afternoon for another episode of Libertarian Lowdown here on MBRR Media. I hope you guys are well. I'm less concerned about your safety and your security and more concerned about your fight to maintain your liberty and your freedom, no matter where you are in this world. Those things are natural rights, and they don't belong just to Americans in our republic. They belong to everybody. It's time to take them back. So until next time, my friends, fight for your freedom. It is yours. Fight for your liberty. It belongs to you. And Sic Semper Tyrannis.
We are go for liftoff in T-minus 30.
Stand by for further instructions, Minnesota Black Robe Regiment.
Secondary guidance systems engaged.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, it will be on my mark.
All systems are a go. All systems are a go.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, you are over the target. You are authorized to fire at